Hello, everyone, and good morning. Welcome to our live feed update for July 28th. I'm your host, Taran Armstrong, and I'm here today to update you on everything that happened yesterday on the Big Brother 26 live feeds. It was day 12 in the house, and there was a veto competition. There was drama. There were cut feeds. There were secrets revealed. And with me to talk about it all is Maggie. How you doing, Maggie?
I swear my StreamYard, it just the page just went goodbye, like you're gone. I was like, what happened? I'm good. Maybe this is like the omen of the day. I feel like I'm a bad omen coming on the live feed updates because there's a specific occurrence that seems to only happen on days that I'm covering the live feeds, which we'll talk a lot about today because it was the story. But yeah, I think everybody's tired of it. Nobody wants the feeds to cut. Nobody wants what's going on in the house to happen. And yeah.
Certainly, certainly. So let's talk about it. Let's talk through the day here on the feeds. Of course, as we all know, Chelsea is the HOH. She nominated uh Angela, Kenny, and Lisa, with Lisa as the target. And there was a little bit of drama that might there be a pawn to be used instead? Should we throw up Cam or Cedric? Initially, it was Makensy or Leah, but eventually they just got down to Lisa going up straight on the block. And so that's what happened. But we do still have a veto competition to play, and there's some more drama to get through. So so let's talk about it. One thing that was mentioned yesterday was that Quinn had told T-Core about Angela noticing a group of people in the backyard hanging out talking, and had said something along the lines of like, "That's the group." And Quinn told T-Core about this the night before. And today here on day 12, T-Core took some issue with that, talking to Cam about how like, hey, just so you know, Angela pointed us out the other day when we were hanging out. It was T-Core, Cam, Cedric, and Chelsea together. And so very quickly, you can sort of realize, wait a minute. Is she pointing out this group for a reason? Because that seems a little specific.
Yeah. And yes, Cam, Chelsea, and Cedric are locked in together and do have the 3Cs alliance, but T-Core is not a part of that. Was just hanging out. Obviously, like I said, this is something that actually, I don't know why, but I'm always seem to be on the update when things like this happen in the house. I have nothing new or interesting to add, but I did want to read a tweet from BB23 winner Xavier. I think that this really sums up the way that we should all be looking at this situation. Xavier says to future house guests, a cookout 2.0 isn't going to happen. People have tried and failed. What we did was rare and isn't easily duplicated. My advice, avoid claiming POCs are banding together without substantial evidence. It will help you both in and out of the game. And then he says, to clarify, calling out alliances is not a bad thing. It's part of Big Brother. Notice my advice was simply to help future house guests avoid getting a Kyle treatment, since there always seems to be more controversy when people suggest POCs are working together post cookout. And I think that the most important thing about this tweet is that he said, avoid claiming POCs are banding together without substantial evidence. Like if you see 4 people hanging out in the backyard, maybe don't say this is the group.
Right. And the thing too is that like there's a lot of there's some debate about like what she even meant here.
Mhm.
And so, so Tikor is talking to Cedric about this and feels a certain way about it.
Mhm.
She eventually talks to this eventually comes back to Chelsea as well, as they kind of talk about it in general. And I don't think that they are like super upset about this. It's just kind of like, let's talk about this. Let's sort of like get a sense of how we feel about it. And so eventually this conversation comes back to Angela. That Chelsea is going to have a conversation with Angela in the HOH room. A good portion of this is not on the feeds, but it becomes relatively clear that that Angela is told about this and or questioned about this in some way. Um, and she then is going to go and talk to Quinn because she's been made aware that Quinn was sort of the cause of all of this, that the information came from him. He's the one that she told it to. And she confronts him in the bathroom and she's like, Quinn, what the hell? Why would you do this to me? And he's like, what do you mean? She's like, why did you tell Tikor that I said this? And he's like, I mean, I didn't mean it in a bad way. I was just trying to be like, hey, I was like, I want this to be like a good relationship between you and Tikor. She's like, you're lying to me. Why are you lying to me, Quinn? I trusted you. He's like, why? It's like, well, I genuinely, I didn't even think, like, I thought you were saying like that's the group, but like those are the people we're working with. So I was just trying to tell Tikor like, hey, I think we should like talk about this. I didn't even mean it in a bad way. That's crazy. That's crazy, Quinn. How could you do this to me? And as this is happening, Tikor walks into the bathroom and she's like, can you explain what's happening right now? And Andrew says, this is exactly what's happening. The feed's cut.
And I think obviously yesterday was atrocious with feed cuts. And I'm going to be honest, it makes us feel like something really bad or sinister must be going on. Like, it adds this color to all of this where because we're unable to watch these conversations go down. Like, I don't know how Tikor feels about this after the conversation with Angela. I don't know what was said between Chelsea and Angela. Like, I it makes us have to fill in blanks that I think is incredibly unfair to these house guests.
Yeah. I mean, in a significant way. I mean, it definitely implies that something very serious went down with the Lisa thing,
Mhm.
that players have alluded to. And now it feels like very clearly the producers do not feel like they can trust Angela to be on the feeds or talked about on the feeds, lest she do something that they would then have to take action on. And if that is the case, what are we doing here? Why aren't you taking action on it?
Exactly. It makes me feel like, okay, so clearly she's done something very bad that like is an offense worthy of being kicked out of the house. And like, I mean, I don't know, right? But that's like, of course, where your mind is going to go. It's just all of these unknowns make it really, I think are also like very unfair to Angela if that's not the case of what's going on. I'm wildly speculating right now because we have nothing to go off of.
Which is consistently why having the live feeds is a protection for the players against
Yes.
producer manipulation and edits and so on and so forth. Uh, like if Angela is doing heinous things and the feeds are cutting, then that's still what's being assumed. If she's not doing heinous things and the feeds are cutting, she certainly would like them to not be cutting.
Yes.
And we also know that Big Brother producers certainly would have loved to have hit that cut feed button earlier last season before Luke said the thing. So I think they're just a little more jumpy on that button just in case. And why? Right? Like what are we trying to do here? It's pretty ridiculous.
It is. And it's not like, I mean, clearly Angela was trying to defend her line of thinking to T-Core and Quinn. And like, I would have liked to hear it. I'm sure the other people who are watching the feeds and watching the show would have liked to hear it. And it is like, it just is giving a disservice to everybody. Like it sucks.
Yeah. So the feeds cut away. We're hearing from some people that clearly some things are going on inside the house. We're outside the house. Eventually, T-Core comes out. She's about to start explaining what's happening inside the house and her frustration with it. And the feeds cut again. And then they're just down for like 2 hours or something along those lines.
Well, yeah, because you can't show a conversation. You can't have all 4 cams on a conversation if every single person in the house is talking about something specific.
Right. We can't see what it is, and we can't hear people talk about what it is, because
It's really like it really is such like a break of trust with your audience too. Because it makes me think like they're trying to hide something really, really bad. And like I said it already in this podcast, like if it's not that bad and they're just cutting because they're jumpy, like that is so unfair to these house guests who now I am assuming like something really, really bad happened.
yeah. It's again like the idea also, because I've heard this a lot. The idea that it's due to fan reaction or due to like an attempt to protect people. My experience being hovering around this industry would say absolutely not. Big Brother and its live feeds, again, protects its contestants significantly more than any other reality show in existence. The way that most reality shows deal with and exploit and just like utterly devastate their contestants, their subjects, is atrocious. And Big Brother is weirdly, and I know this might sound weird if you're a Big Brother fan because you know so much, but it's weirdly one of the best ones because of the live feeds, because producers can't do nearly as much heinous shit as other shows do. And so the idea that like this is the fans' fault or it's to protect the contestants is wildly off base.
In my opinion, like I am wildly speculating, but this leads me to the conclusion that the producers don't want to mess up their schedule. Like their schedule was messed up last season and they are nervous that something will be on the feeds that will make them remove one of the house guests. And wild speculation, right? Because we have no answers. We don't know why this is going on. But yeah.
Well, here's the thing. We're basically not going to see Angela on the live feeds probably from now on. It seems we're not really going to see any of her on the feeds. Yesterday, anytime anybody brings up Angela, the feeds cut. So we don't know what is happening with Angela beyond the fact that she blew up on Quinn, and pretty much everyone in the house now feels like they're all voting Angela out. Everybody is pretty convinced and pretty on board. Angela is the one that they plan to vote out if she does not win the veto. Spoilers, at this point, she had already not won the veto. And if she does not win the AI arena competition. So Angela is the current target now.
Yeah, the only clips that we get to see of Angela on the feeds is her sitting alone and eating an avocado looking sad, and even like when anybody in the house comes up to try to talk to her, because they're obviously going to talk about what happened, the feeds cut away. So like all of the Angela content we got for the rest of the day was her like literally alone.
Mhm. Um, so let's talk a little bit about the veto competition.
Mhm.
Because they did have a veto competition. One thing to note going into the veto competition is that Kenny volunteered for the block and was basically saying like, I don't really intend to win this. Like I don't. It's like does not benefit me to win this. I'm happy to be sitting on the block. That has been his mo from the beginning, and so there are some people looking to throw this competition, which leaves the door open a bit more for people who really want to win to win, and so that's why Kenny won the veto.
Oh, wait, Taran, do you mean that when he had an opportunity to do something in the game that would make him feel good, he did it and suddenly he doesn't want to go home anymore? And suddenly his head's in the game and he's feeling really good about it? That's so weird how that works.
Yeah, I don't know. It's man,
It's
was he riding high after that win too,
it's
talking about the comp.
it's almost like when something good is happening for Kenny in the game, he's excited about the game. And when something bad is happening for Kenny in the game, he's okay and he just wants to go home to his family. Wow.
Mm.
I, for one, am shocked by this revelation. This is what I've been saying about Kenny this whole time. He didn't want to go home. He was just sad he was losing. Come on.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, Kenny now has the veto. And as of right now, plans to use the veto on himself. And that means that Chelsea will have to replace him with somebody else. Now she does a bit of a funny thing, which is that go ahead.
No, I just like, we have to talk about this because somebody tweeted and was like, is this going to be the trend in the house? Like the person who wins the veto, I guess, just gets to go to the HOH and tell them who the replacement nominee is. Like, what is happening?
Well, so usually what you would do here, right, as the HOH, and this has been kind of Chelsea's MO from the beginning, is that she didn't want to do structured one-on-ones. I wasn't sure about that strategy to begin with. I still kind of feel like, maybe don't do structured one-on-ones, but at least talk to more people.
Mhm.
Because I feel like she's really been sort of cornering herself in a specific area of the house and talking to like a specific group of people. And the lack of communication with some others, I think, is hurting her. Um, but in addition to that, like one of the benefits of talking to more people as HOH is that you get a lot of information. And when you have nominations to come, or you have a replacement nominee to make, you can ask people like, "What do you think I should do?"
Mhm.
Like help me out here. And so in some ways, you could interpret what she does as that, but, like, really heavy-handed. But, like, the thing is it doesn't work if that's her intention because it's way too heavy-handed, and how it comes out is that she's just looking for somebody to make the decision for her because basically what happens is she goes to Kenny and she says, "Well, as the veto winner, would you like to just tell me who I should put up on the block?"
And Kenny is like, no, I don't want to do that. I
Yep.
I think maybe just don't touch Cedric, but it's all you, which good on you, Kenny. It's almost like you do know what to do in the house. And when things are going well, you can play Big Brother.
Yeah, he's basically like, "That's kinda your call, no?"
Mhm.
It's kinda your decision to make. She also asks Angela this, by the way, in that conversation where she's asking about the other stuff. And she's like, "Do you have somebody that you think I should put up?" And Angela's like, "No." that's your call.
Yeah, when you're on the block as a nominee, do not ever say a name. Unless you're like, I'm going home, unless this person is next to me and like I'm going all in. Do do not ever say a name because all you're giving is the HOH ammo against you.
Yeah, and usually it's pretty easy to squeeze a name out of someone. But
Mhm.
when you ask them so bluntly, like, "Can you tell me who to put up?" They're not.
Mhm.
It's way easier for them to be like, "Nah, no, 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 thanks."
I loved the way that Kenny skirted around it and was like, "Well, I'll tell you who please don't touch. Like, please don't do like put Cedric up. Like he's reminds me of my son. Please don't do that because that is giving her a name, but it's giving her a name to protect. And the only thing that she could take away from that conversation is like going to Cedric and being like, Kenny loves you. Like, I'm
Mhm,
not, so I thought that that was a good way to sort of skirt around the answer rather than give people who you would like their game to be harmed or potentially over, give people who you would like their game to be safe.
mhm. Yeah. So that's where Chelsea stands at the moment. Is that she is not sure who to put up. Luckily for her, she has another volunteer, somebody who took quite the offense to being volunteered for last week, is now perfectly happy to actually do it. Tucker, somewhere along the line, he talks about it, but I don't think we saw it itself. But Tucker has volunteered to go up on the block, to help face off against Lisa in the AI arena, and sit in the spot.
So, why do they do this? Like, what, Taryn, I would love to know what you think. You are a true scholar of this game. You have consumed more hours of Big Brother than I think maybe anyone in the world, even more than these producers. Why do you think people do this when
Honestly,
unprompted?
it's kind of it's especially hard because again, I didn't see the initial, like, conversation of, like, how it came up. Um, like, for all like, maybe Chelsea asked Tucker, like, "Can you tell me who to put up?" And his response was like, "Well, hmm, well, what about me?" Which would tell us a lot about, like, where the idea came from and how it came to him. I would assume that part of this is because of what happened last week, where, like, last week, Matt volunteered him for the block, and he was like, "Well, obviously, I would be down. I do have that dog in me, but don't do that for me." But then he was still
Mhm.
pretending for Matt and much of the house that he was willing to go on the block. He was telling everyone, he was pretending to Matt, "I'm totally willing," and telling everyone else, "I definitely would be willing if not for Matt volunteering me without my permission." And so he spent like 4 days, like under that umbrella. And so the idea is already in his head. He's already told a lot of people he would be willing. Maybe then he's put in a spot where him volunteering would make some sense. And he feels like, yeah, I should do it. And also, like, he does I think genuinely want to beat Lisa in a competition.
I was about to say, do you think a lot of this has to do like is this giving BB8 what's his name who got
Justin,
Yes, is it giving like I want to sit next to
yep,
Lisa and be the one who gets
to
like who
flush the.
yeah, like is that what's happening? Which I mean, God forbid we saw this conversation on feeds because it would have been a game conversation and that wasn't really what we were watching last night. But because I'm like, that would make at least a little more like I could follow that line of thinking more than just like, yeah, sure, I'll do it, whatever. Like that is disappointing. I was really into Tucker last week because of the fact that he was like, no way am I going to let myself be put up on the block as a pawn. And I loved the conversation that you were having with Mary yesterday. I thought it was brilliant and great strategy. And if anybody is listening and you're going into the house next year, remember that. Like I would steal that if I was playing Big Brother. Um, but it is really disappointing to hear him say, to other people when he's explaining his decision too, like, well, Chelsea and I really haven't gotten to talk that much. So to make up for that to her, I volunteered to go on the block. Like, that logic is just not sound to me.
Yeah. Well, he has volunteered. So the thing is, though, we do not have confirmation from Chelsea that she's going to like accept his volunteering.
Mhm. We have no confirmation at all about what's going on in the game.
Yeah, the feeds were down a lot, guys.
Like 6 hours. It was crazy. I was like, oh, great. I'm going into this live feed update and have not heard one word from the HOH about what she's thinking about replacement noms.
So hard to know exactly how things are going to go. Worth noting that after winning the veto, Kenny talked to MJ and said, and they talked about who might go up. And he said to her, well, I think people think it's going to be you. She said, what do you mean? He said, I overheard some people talking. And he's talking about like T-Core and Quinn and a few other people and how they were saying that they thought that MJ might go up on the block. And she's like, well, I hope not.
I know that we're not really to this point in the night yet. Like, we haven't touched on it, but can we talk about MJ and her power and what she's doing with it?
Well, let's talk
Okay.
about because there's a whole MJ power plot line that has led to
Mhm.
basically everyone in the house or most people in the house now knowing that she has the power.
Mhm. Do you wanna hold or do you wanna get
Let's
into
do it.
it?
Let's tell the
Okay.
story.
So, basically, everybody knows. Like, MJ has started to open up and tell everybody that she has the power. Like, Tucker knows at this point.
She told
Um
Brooklyn earlier in the day. Tucker questioned her about it, and she
Mhm.
basically admitted it to Tucker and didn't tell the details of the power, but then Tucker then knew, and then Tucker was telling more people, and so it's spreading around.
And I have to say, usually in Big Brother or like any of these games, if you have an advantage, do not tell people. Like, keep it to yourself. However, the way that Makensy has sort of positioned this power is that it's kind of like an immunity idol because of the unknown of the America putting up a veto, like the replacement nominee. People don't want to risk that. So if the device of the power was that she got to take herself down and she got to name the replacement, I think that they would flush it this week and they would be like, no matter who MJ puts up, like, we're voting out Angela. This is, or Angela or Lisa, like, this is that, or that's that. But because of the unknown, it gives this, it instills this fear in everybody about touching her and having that power be used. And it's really, really helping her. And her telling people, I actually feel like is very good for her game.
Yeah, I mean, you're right. It is basically, and again, we dunked on the power because it's so much weaker than
Mhm.
Quinn's in the sense that Quinn gets to just have an HOH week,
Yeah.
basically. Um, but it's still a very good power in the sense that, yeah, it's basically a 4-week god immunity idol.
Mhm.
Uh, where in Survivor, when you have an immunity idol, you need to predict when the votes are coming on you and then use it in advance. Makensy is just guaranteed safe anytime somebody tries to take her out. And again,
Mhm.
unlike Survivor, where it's like, well, a majority of people need to cast their votes on you. And with a God Idol, you get to play it after the votes are read. So you know you need to use it. You still have a majority of people against you, and they all
Mhm.
get to have been in the majority going against you. Whereas in Big Brother, MJ gets to look at the individual person who decided to
Mhm.
put her on the block and go, nope, I get to not be on the block. And now that individual person has just started a feud with somebody that they knew they weren't going to be able to get out anyway. And then in addition to that, take
Yes.
away their power and their control over their own week and put it in the hands of America. It's
Mhm.
it, by telling people about this power, MJ has protected herself for 4 weeks, or at least she should be protected for 4 weeks. Now, I cannot fully credit her for doing this because I do believe it was accidental. I think that she
Mhm.
basically had every intention of like sort of hiding the power a bit more. And I don't think she recognized that this was a great deterrent that this should actively be using.
I do think she
But
has recognized it now.
yes,
Mhm.
and in some ways, I think that that she is currently utilizing it in the correct way, having recognized where this is, and in some ways as well, I think the fact that she wasn't actively trying to use it as a deterrent helped sell it as a deterrent even more.
Yes.
This idea that like I don't want to tell you about this, but this is my power, and letting them think about all of the bad things instead of being like, you don't want to put me on the block because this is what's going to
Yes.
happen, like what Matt did, um,
And
but with no
also
power.
people would see that more as a challenge
Yeah.
against them and their power versus and I also think that it is this is why like you don't want players like Angela playing Big Brother with you because I said this last week on the roundtable or on I said it at one point last week that like Angela is really unpredictable. And you never know where she's gonna go. And like she switches up on her allies so quickly that like I do actually think that if Angela was the HOH and knew about Mackenzie's power and knew that like America had the chance to put someone up because she was safe, she'd be like, well, whatever. America can decide, like she's somebody who wouldn't care because she doesn't deeply care about her allies. But someone like Chelsea is really wanting to keep her numbers and does not want to put any of her allies in a vulnerable position. I guess, but also like yesterday, she maybe almost put Cam or Cedric up on the block, but that's beside the point. So I think that because of the layer of unknown, because she is not threatening them with the power, it's become in this house this sort of like really looming large thing that everybody has to work around.
Mhm. Yes. So that's kind of what's happening there. Now, another thing with MJ is that she is probably pushing the hardest right now to get the women, specifically the women of the barbershop, to be working together. Um, and this is her, Leah, Brooklyn, Rubina, basically that and Chelsea, of course. So like that group of people, which I think is like again, the barbershop is the barbershop. And she should honestly probably just drop the barbershop angle
Mhm.
and just focus on the women angle because I think that would play a lot better.
Mhm.
But I mean, she's doing what she needs to do, I think, to work her way back into the house. It's slow going, but with the safety that she now has and the protection of the HOH right now and all of that, like she's got some time and she's making some
Yes.
inroads here.
Yes, this has bought her time, which is what she really does need because I see people in the chat saying women's alliances never work. Yeah, when you're like, all of the women gather, let's do this thing. Like the way that alliances really work is when people have relationships, have bonds, trust each other, and then come together. And I do think I have always said that a women's alliance 1000% could work in Big Brother if it happens mid game. Like that is something that is the missing chip in the women's alliances because it needs to be the right group of women. It needs to be women who have bonded naturally and then decide to come together versus the first week being like, let's all gather. If you are female identifying, like let's go, because you need the right mix of people. And because Mackenzie has bought herself essentially the 2 more weeks of time after this week, she maybe could piecemeal something together that would last.
Mhm. So we'll see where this goes. There's a world where this develops into something, and and Chelsea kind of goes with them because Chelsea's kind of backing away from Cam. And but then if Cam is attached to, it's such a complicated mess of strategic structure that
Mhm.
it's hard to really suss out exactly where things are gonna land. But yeah.
It's like so weirdly fluid. Um, and I am a little scared for you for the rest of the season, Taryn, because these fluid seasons are very fun, but they're so complicated and hard to keep track of. Like it's giving a little BB Can 9, it's giving a little BB Can 6, like just everyone is kind of connected to everybody, but then there are little pockets, but then there's I think that it's really bizarre that we're almost 2 weeks into the season and nothing has settled and like really, really solidified.
Yeah. We'll see where it goes. So uh there's another plot line that is
Mhm.
continuing today, and that is Leah and Cam. So Cam was supposedly warned about this earlier in the day. And yet he's very publicly flirting with Leah once more. He has a
Well,
funny conversation with her in the bathroom, where he gives basically his own version of like Quinn's strategic pep talk to her,
mhm.
except his version, instead of being like, "This is why you're in trouble. This is what we're gonna do to fix it. Let's work together." His strategic pep talk was, "Well, you'll be fine. You'll be fine for like some weeks.
And yeah,
Some weeks, I think. I mean, it will depend on who wins HOH. Like, it could be less, but like, some weeks.
yeah. And he's talking to Leah, and she's not somebody who's just like, oh, okay. She was like, what do you mean? I'm concerned.
It's like you'll like be as long as you win something in that time, people will come to you and everything will be fine. And you're winning things. You're coming close.
Well, my favorite part about Cam, like you said, supposedly being warned, like I personally think he was obviously warned because he's doing what he wants to do. Because at this point, if you've been watching Big Brother for any amount of time, you know that when it comes to physical attraction, like people are going to do what they want to do no matter what, no matter how much you warn somebody, like they're going to do what they want to do. But he's doing that thing that like we saw Corey try to do last year. Like everybody who really is trying to play Big Brother, but also has a thing for somebody, will still be publicly flirting, still be continuing the relationship, but going to other people and being like, you don't think that I'm like too connected to Leah, right? Like you don't think that, right? I don't. I got it. I'm good. Like you don't have to worry about that. I heard rumblings. Nobody has to worry. And it's one of those like the lady doth protest too much situations.
Yeah, and so they have that conversation. They then continue to be very flirty through the night. And Chelsea, of course, is gonna see it. She's not happy about it. She tells more people about how they're worse than Matt and Makensy. And other people are, oh, Chelsea's seeing this. Like, oh boy. And of course that's music to Quinn's ears, who is also seeing this and being like, yeah, that's fine. That's fine. I mean, Cam's got to go, but it's fine.
Aw, Quinn.
So this all kind of leads toward late into the night. The biggest sort of strategic conversation we're allowed to hear is with Quinn, Tikor, and Chemo. They've been flirting around with this idea of being like a final three, and so they're really locking in here, Meg.
Love this group. Love them.
Yes.
I'm really excited about it.
So uh basically what happens is that they're talking about like how everyone seems to want to work with us. Everyone's coming to us with offers. A little Matt like perhaps, but this time it's true. And they lock in their final three. And Quinn says, "Are we locking this? Like, is this it?" Yes. He says, "Okay. With that in mind, I have some things to tell you.
Whoa.
I'm in an alliance with Cam, Cedric, Chelsea, and Brooklyn." And he tells the story of how this alliance was pitched to him. He's always been skeptical of Cedric. And so at one point, Cam comes up to him and says, "How do you feel about Cedric?" And he was like, "I don't know. I really like him, but like I'm not sure where his head is at."
Mhm.
And then Cam brings him into a room with Cedric waiting. And he's like, "Oh, hey." And then they tell him, "So Chelsea, Chelsea, Cam, and Cedric, we have been talking about wanting to make an alliance, and we want you to be in it." And he was like, "Sure, yeah, totally. I would absolutely accept that invitation to your alliance that you have made. Four-person alliance sounds great to me. I love this idea." And they're like, "No, no, no. There's a fifth too. We're not going to tell you who yet, but there's also going to be a fifth." And
Makes me feel
so
super great about the seriousness of this alliance and how much you trust me that you won't even tell me who the fifth member is.
right. So given this retelling, assuming it is mostly true, fairly obvious to see why Quinn was never super invested in the Pentagon. Fairly obvious to see why he was able to recognize that maybe Cam, Cedric, and Chelsea are the core of the Pentagon.
Yeah, and why he felt comfortable connecting with Brooklyn and being like, they wouldn't obviously this isn't right, right?
Mhm. So very, very funny stuff there. Tikor is like, "Oh, I'm really glad that you told me about this. Like I always kind of thought I was on the bottom of what they had going on. And now I know."
Mhm.
And so they start talking more about like, well, what should we do? Who should we bring in? And they've been talking a lot about Cam. And so they bring up Cam and Quinn is like, I feel like I can't bring Cam into any more things because we've also got that have not thing, Chemo." And and Chemo is like, "Oh yeah, that thing that I mean, is that even real? Is that even real, Quinn? What do we even call it? Like the Andersons or whatever?" And Quinn's like, "Yeah, sorry, Chemo, I'm blowing us up here, but like, yeah, there's like a have not thing too. It's obviously it's me and Tucker and Cam and Chemo." And so like I'm already in multiple things with Cam. I'm like looking at Cam, I'm like, "Oh, look, we're in another thing." So I probably shouldn't be in any more things with Cam. Um, and so it's all out in the open here. Quinn is just dumping all the info.
And I do think that that is important when you have your main alliance. Like I remember I think it was Tyler who on the BB22 feeds, he said that he knew level 6 was real because when they all got together, they all started just sharing everything that they knew and like truly brain dumping and being open. And he was like, okay, then this is the real thing because nobody's holding back. So I do think that that is important. Um, I I think maybe, not immediately after you're like, this is the group. I'm going to tell you everything. Like maybe then you can go away, talk it over with Chemo and be like, I really think this is the group and we should get together and have like I think that there is some nuance to it. And Quinn has shown that his mouth is a little big. So it was spilling everything and we'll see where that goes.
Yeah, Quinn's a little loosey goosey with the
Mhm.
information. He really he loves to tell people things.
Mhm.
And so it hasn't quite come back to bite him yet. It certainly seemed like it would have given the Angela blow up. She did
Yeah.
not apparently reveal that he has the power despite the blow up, so he is still somehow clear of that. But this, I mean, it's really, there's a lot of discs spinning in the air right now for Quinn in terms of the amount of information he has let loose in various
Mhm.
places. And you know, this is like the alliance that he is seemingly going all in on, along with the Leah thing. But and for what it's worth, I do think that revealing the Pentagon specifically to T-Core is really
Mhm.
valuable because T-Core said straight up, like, that's really good for me to know because she has been, you know, kind of pulled in by some of these people and didn't know that they had other things going on. Now, that could be a good thing because it could, you know, keep her in with Chemo and Quinn. It could also be a bad thing because it now
Mhm.
lets her know how she needs to get in with those people more if she needs to.
Yeah.
So that's the danger of revealing this kind of information. And this is where I really feel like, you know, if we're talking about Quinn, we're talking about like the stuff that he is doing. A lot of people are talking about the revealing of information,
Mhm.
which I do think is very risky. But the actual thing that I think Quinn has really dropped the ball on is that he just hasn't talked to Chelsea much.
Mhm.
And he even says so in this conversation. But like he has been dropping the ball on the Pentagon relationships in general. And I think it's because he's like positioning himself to take a shot at now Cam instead of Cedric.
Mhm.
And you could certainly tie that all back to Leah if you want, and I'm fine if you do. But I think like strategically, the thing that he is doing the most wrong is that he is they have not gotten together as a have not alliance. They have not gotten together as a Pentagon alliance. Quinn has been like kind of just letting those relationships and strategic alliances float around untended. And I think that's very dangerous for him because if you are going to play this kind of game where you have your fingers in all of these different pots, you know, like certain house guests who put their fingers in things, um, then
Whoa.
then you need to be actively maintaining all of those things because you can't just leave it be. You can't just like once you start it, you can't just ignore it. It has to be tended.
You've said this before. It is an exhausting game to play. It is a really hard game to play to have your fingers in all of those pots. It's a lot. But that when those types of players drop the ball, that's when you see their game start to crumble. And I think that you're right. I also think that it's important to point out that like Quinn obviously has, you know, a little bit of resentment against the Pentagon for very clearly being on the bottom. And, you know, maybe he has resentment towards Cam because of the Leah, like whatever. But like just because you are able to recognize that you're on the bottom and you might be upset about that, that is the time to suck up more. That is the time to push harder rather than be like, well, screw you guys. I don't even want to work with you. Let me go and find somebody else. Like, still be looking around and finding other people, but keep those relationships as strong as you possibly can so that you at least have something to work with.
Mhm. Yeah, so they talk a lot more. This is actually was toward the end of the conversation that they talk more about the alliances, but they were also talking about T-Core had talked to Lisa earlier, and had given Lisa a bit of a pep talk, and Lisa was kind of like, T-Core, why do people not like me? And you know, the answer is like don't be spreading glitter everywhere and putting oil on people's pillows. Like that's probably not the best start. But they had a conversation. Tikor felt like she was able to bond with Lisa some. And she's like, well, Lisa kind of wants to work with me, but like nobody likes Lisa. So what do I do there?
Mhm.
And especially now that they feel like Lisa is going to stay this week because Angela
Mhm.
is now the target. It's like, well, what do we do with Lisa now that she's not the target anymore? Should we do something with that? Should we work with her in some capacity? They have to talk about that. They also talk about specifically Cam and Tucker. So, especially after knowing about the have not thing, Tikor is really concerned about the two of them working together. She does not want
Mhm.
bros teaming up, winning all the comps. So it would be great if
Say
they
it,
could.
T-Core.
Right. It'd
Mhm.
be great if they could get one of them out. And Quinn is like, exactly. Cam needs to go. And Tikor's like, well, I mean, why not Tucker? It's like, well, the thing is, if we get rid of Cam, we get Leah. It's like, does that matter?
And also, like, sounds like Tucker's gonna be on the block this week. Cam's
Exactly.
not gonna be on the block this week. Why would we waste an HOH on someone like Angela? But I still maintain somebody like Angela you can't play with. Like, if I was in the house, I'd be like, we have to get her out. Even with the bros, like, you can at least work with one of them and ride them to the final two. Like, somebody like Angela is so unpredictable that it's just very, in my personal opinion, if I was in there, that's what I would probably think. But I do like this line of thinking from Tikor. I think she's got the spirit, she's got the right idea. And if they went after Tucker this week, if that was what was decided, I would I wouldn't be mad about it. I mean, I would be sad because Tucker, I think, is bringing a lot of fun to the feeds, but I think that strategically for her, that would make a lot of sense.
And it is brought up, like, Tucker's on the block at the end of the week. Should we vote him out? And
Mhm.
they mostly say no. They can't really keep Angela in the game. They wouldn't
Saturday.
maybe do this, but yes, it is. There's a long way to go.
Mhm.
And funny enough, the two people they're talking about potentially taking a shot at are probably the two top contenders for the replacement nominee. So, you know, we'll see. We'll see where things go there. Um, Quinn mentions a few times if Cam gets sniped out of the game, well, if somehow Cam gets sniped out of the game, if Cam left, implying to me that he is now looking to maybe use his power to take Cam out of the game in future weeks. And then that would give them Leah. And so we will see how that goes. But this again is like Quinn's seeming like plot to bring together the people he wants to work with and trying to make Leo work it could certainly put him in a bad spot, I think.
Yeah. Um, you have to, in a situation like this, you have to wonder. And I want to maybe see a little bit more. Like, I feel like maybe if the feeds had actually been on the whole time yesterday, I could speak a little bit more concretely about this. But you have to wonder if this desire to get Cam out is more an emotional one, and what exactly that means and what exactly the game ramifications are in that scenario.
Hmm. Yes. So we'll see. I think there's certainly a lot of time in the week in terms of like what might happen, and plenty more for like us to find out about like Quinn's true motivations here, Chelsea's motivations, and whether what she's going to do with her replacement nominee. As of right now, again, it just feels like Angela is the likely target here. They
Mhm.
do later talk to, or they do talk to Joseph as well. It was mentioned in the conversation between Quinn, T-Court, and Chemo that they don't really need to lock in with Joseph too much because he's already pretty invested in the collective. And they
Mhm.
have this funny moment where Joseph comes out and joins them in the backyard, and Quinn's like, "So if Angela leaves, the collective like has new life, right?" And then the feed's cut because they're talking about Angela. But there was a little bit of a trio suggested with Chemo, Quinn, and Joseph that Quinn kind of jokingly suggested the Crow Boys name for.
Mhm.
So basically Joseph's still in this position where he's just lost so much social capital
Mhm.
that a lot of people are looking at him as a potential number because he's still associated with a lot of those same people. He's still a target for like the MJ side of things. But nobody feels the need to like really lock him in right now, which I think is a mistake, quite honestly. I think that he's desperate for anything to be locking him into.
Mhm.
And I think it would be valuable if they did, but we'll
Mhm.
see.
Yeah. I'm I'm also interested to watch how I out of everybody, I think T-Core is showing a lot of promise over the past couple of days. And I'm also really interested in Chemo and what Chemo's up to because Chemo is really doing like talk less, smile more right now. And I think that you mentioned like you think that that was what got him into trouble and on the block in the first week is that he wasn't really giving much and just trying to like rely on his likability. And that now has turned into some fruitful relationships.
Well,
But
he's talking a lot more strategy now, which I think is the key.
exactly. And I am interested to see if he is going to be able to navigate that into action, like strategic action rather than just talking and being like, let's do that. Like, let's solidify, like getting into things. I'm wondering if how he plans on moving what he would like to have happen forward.
Mhm. Yeah, it right now, it feels like, if it's funny because, like, very beginning of the feeds, it was like, it's Angela versus Matt, right? But then
Uh-huh.
it quickly kind of turned into the 3 Cs versus
Mhm.
kinda like Quinn to some degree.
Mhm.
But now both of those are kind of falling apart, and now it's kind of looking to me like it's T-Core and Chemo
Mhm.
versus, like, Brooklyn and Rubina to some degree,
Yeah.
like,
Yeah. Which I was gonna bring up because we haven't talked about Rubina at all, and we talked
Mhm,
very briefly about Brooklyn, but I really like what they're doing. I like where they're at. I think, right now they're both in a position where they haven't wielded any power. So that sort of is having them on the back foot, but I like their positioning. I think that they're both really smart. They have really good instincts and I I think that they're if what MJ is trying to make happen with the women and all like I think that they're definitely two people to watch. I'm really interested in what is going to go on with them moving forward.
I think Brooklyn has the potential to be the most dangerous player in the game.
Yes.
She just hasn't, like, activated yet,
Mhm.
to, like, actively build a power base, which normally would be a very bad thing, but in this house, it's fine because nobody
Mhm.
else has been able to lock anything in either.
Mhm.
So to me, the question remains, like, will she be able to lock in and create a power base at some point? Because she's
Exactly.
positioned to if she wants to. It's just a matter of when, where, and how, basically.
I feel like Brooklyn is one of those types of players who has enough one of the types of people who has enough social capital that is going to be somebody who makes a mid-game power base and runs with it. Like very Andy Heron, where she's in all of these different things and when the time comes she will be able to I mean I have no idea if she's going to be able to, but predicting the future and like what I hope to see her do is keep up all of these social relationships, stay sort of fluid enough to the point where she can figure out exactly who she wants in her power base and make it happen.
Mhm. Yeah. So keep an eye on Brooklyn. But as of right now, she's definitely just kind of still just existing in these
Mhm.
spaces and actively playing them well. Just
Mhm.
hasn't made any significant movement yet on her own. So we'll see where that goes. But that's about what we have here today. Maggie, anything else that you want to bring up?
No, just like the last thought about Brooklyn is I can't tell if she's one of the types of players who will really need a buddy in her strategic maneuvering, like would really really benefit from somebody who is a little more aggressive strategically or if she's going to be able to turn that on. And I guess that will remain to be seen.
It will. All right. Well, that's what we have for you then. Thank you so much for joining us here today. Of course, we'll be back tomorrow morning at 11 a.m. Eastern to update you on everything that happens today on the Big Brother 26 live feeds. Hopefully, we will get some kind of sense of what's going to happen. The feeds will be actively on for a little while. One more thing about Brooklyn actually, and
Oh
Quinn,
yeah.
is that I did tweet this out earlier, but turns out Brooklyn and Quinn share more than just an alliance. They also share a podcast.
She watches the same podcasts I watch, and that's some nerdy shit. Like, that's crazy. When she revealed that she watches, and this isn't a good podcast name, I apologize. When she was like, yeah, I watch Rob has a podcast, and I was like, oh, that's deep.
Yeah.
Look, number one, yes, when I am in the world and I say, oh yeah, I work for a podcast network, and people say, what's the name of the network? I always say RHAP, because saying Rob has a podcast
But then don't they ask you what it stands for?
No. Usually because they don't, they're I feel like in most people's heads, when I say like, yeah, I podcast, they're thinking it's like me alone in my room, like talking into a mic and just putting it out into the ether. Like they don't know that it's a community, and it's like something like people who aren't into reality TV or don't understand what this is it's usually like, oh, that's cool, and then they move along. But yes, of course, it's very confusing when you're like, Rob has a podcast and people are like, who is Rob? And I'm like, well, I mostly cover Big Brother, where I podcast with this guy named Taran. And they're like, I thought it was Rob has a podcast. And I'm like, well, yes, but Taran covers Big Brother, and it's a different thing. And, it does get a bit confusing. And what I will say to Quinn about Brooklyn saying that she listens to our podcast. Okay. I am wondering how much, because there is a lot of Taylor Hall going on. So I'm wondering, like, what podcast has she listened to? Like, when did she start listening? So I'll be interested to see after the house, when you guys get to talk to her, how much of the podcast she's consumed. But
Might be more of a ironically Taylor Hale kind of thing where, before going on the show, Googling podcasts.
Yeah, that's why I'm like, maybe she listened to a couple here and there, or she was like, I know of this podcast,
Yeah.
So we'll see.
I can tell you the usual way it goes for me is that like I'm like, oh hey, my name is Taran. They're like, oh, what do you do for work? And I'm like, oh, I do like podcasts, like content on the internet kind of stuff. And they're like, oh, what kind of stuff do you make? I talk about TV. Don't ask me, please don't ask me. What kind of TV? It's like this show called Big Brother. Yeah. Oh yeah, I've heard of that. Oh yeah, that's still on. Yeah, it's I talk about like the strategy of it. It's kind of fun. Like, oh, that's so interesting. Oh, that's so cool. What's the name of your podcast? It's like so I work with this guy Rob. He was on Survivor. Oh, Boston Rob. No, that is Rob Sesternino. He played with Boston Rob. He actually got voted out by Boston Rob.
It's actually the Rob that sucks.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's called Rob as a podcast. That's the thing. Because I work with him, and they're like, oh, sure, that's cool. Like, I've had that conversation a bunch of times. I'm not gonna lie.
Yeah, like I said, I've had my version of that too. Obviously, it's very different than what you do. I am a small contributor, but usually when people are like, "Oh, you podcast," okay, because everyone in the world who wants to work in entertainment is like, I podcast. I'll be like, no, I promise you it's real, and like show them the YouTube page and be like, look, there's a lot of us there. We all love it. I promise it's a real thing. It's not just me talking to 3 people in my room, even though sometimes it may feel that way. But thank you all for being here and enjoying what we're doing. We appreciate you.
All right. Well, thank you all so much for joining us here today. Of course, I've got a plushie that you can buy. It's of my kitten, and he's a little robot. Look how cool he looks. You only have 3 days, I think, left to pre-order, and then it's gone forever. You'll never be able to have one. Only the people
Wow.
who buy it in the next 3 days or bought it already will be able to have a little Kellis plushie. So make sure you get that in. The link is pinned on my Twitter. You can also find me over on Twitch, hanging out, playing games, watching feeds, watching episodes. The episode will be live tonight. I will be watching House of the Dragon, and podcasting about that tonight. So if you would like to hear about the penultimate episode of House of the Dragon, typically penultimate episodes of these shows, there's some stuff going on, so we'll see. Check that out. We're also doing coverage for The Getaway. We also talk about scripted TV weekly on The Tastemakers, where we are going to be this week talking about The Boys, The Acolyte, Presumed Innocent. Spoilers for all three, but you can pick and choose which one you want to listen to if you haven't caught up yet. So tune in for all of that. Maggie, what do you got going on?
Yeah, I'm here talking about Big Brother. I'm recording one of the Survivor 50 wish list podcasts with Mike Bloom sometime this week. So that'll be coming out in the next couple of weeks. You can find me on Instagram and TikTok at @MLMorgan_.
All right. Well, thank you once again for joining us, and I will see all of you next time.